Let's see it. We're
Yep. I see it.
Yep. Hi there. This is Bill Holton with Field Trial Central and Field Trial Central Live. Tonight we're lucky enough to be joined with professional Robert Ecker of Midnight Kennels in Pennsylvania. Most people probably already know this, but Robert is a professional handler and trainer. Trains walking, shooting dogs and grouse and woodcock dogs. Competes, pretty heavily on both the walking circuit and the grouse and woodcock circuit for everywhere from, I guess we've seen them everywhere from Wisconsin or Minnesota, I guess, actually all the way to the East Coast and up and down that East Coast into Canada. So been super successful. I've known Robert for, I don't know, I shouldn't probably say, but I know it's a really long time. So it's older than his young son that helped us get set up here tonight. So it's been and it's been a lot of fun. It's been fun watching Robert really transform through this game, and he's been super successful and I think he's probably had a pretty good time doing it. So Robert, thanks a lot for coming on.
Thank you very much for having me, Bill. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, we kind of started doing these Field Trial Central lives the last couple of weeks, and part of it's we're all kind of stuck at home, and we're in our social distancing situations, and this is a time of year where someone like Robert and the guys we've had on before are still quite often field trialing, and they're traveling up and down the road, and this year obviously we're not, and so we have the benefit of being able to to get someone like Robert in one place for a deal like this tonight. And Robert, what have you been spending your time doing here while we're going through this pandemic?
Yeah, first I'd like to say I want to thank all of the healthcare workers at this time, and the first responders. It's really very difficult for everybody, but they're definitely out there on the front lines, and we need to all let them know that we're praying for them and support them any way we can. And mostly what we could do is like you said, stay at home. That being said, you were right. This is definitely typically a busy time for me to be on the road. Excuse me, traveling to field trials, and unfortunately they're all shut down right now, so we're not traveling. That being said, it is a great time. Typically, people want to send me young dogs or hunting dogs to train, and we kind of put that off until May and June because we are traveling. And now that we're not, it is a great time for anyone interested in sending us a dog to work. We have plenty of time. That's definitely not an issue now. And the nice thing is we can train. We don't have to travel anywhere. We could train right from the kennel here in Pennsylvania. Our grounds are right out the back door. So traveling and the social distancing issue is not a problem for us right now. So we are up and running.
Yeah, great. And you're training on both, some wild birds and woodcock coming through, as well as I know you always have a pretty good supply of pre-release birds, pheasants and chuckers and everything else that you're able to work on.
Yeah, that's a great point. We train a lot on wild birds. This has been a phenomenal spring for woodcock. The weather's been great. We have several really good covers. One new cover that I found, private ground that I can access, and it's just been loaded with birds and very convenient to work a bunch of dogs in. So a lot of wild birds, woodcock right now. When they start nesting, which they are, we found a couple of nests. We will back off of that, and we'll transition to, depending on the dog. Some of the young dogs might be pigeons. We don't use any quail up north. We only use quail on our training program in North Carolina. So after the pigeon work, we do use a lot of chuckers, and we have a farm up in Wayne County, Pennsylvania, that has a great population of wild birds. And there are some wild quail, pheasants, grouse, and woodcock, which is pretty neat in this day and age. You have all 4 species on one property.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, well, it's not a secret that it really takes birds to make a bird dog, and if we want to try to chase wild birds and whether you're hunting or field trials, those wild birds are really important too. So it's been it's great to see that you have the ability to do that. Let's go back. I guess I kind of know some of the story, but let's go back and start a long time ago when a little baby Robert Ecker got started here in field trials. I know you're like all of us, right? You didn't start as a professional; you started as an amateur, and got started there in Pennsylvania. How what brought that along, and give us just a synopsis of how you got started and got to be a professional.
Okay. In high school, I got the bug to bird hunt, and I had my uncle Pete was instrumental. He raised English setters and was a bird hunter. And like I said, I decided I wanted a bird hunt. He took me under his wing, got me started. And of course, once you start bird hunting, at some point you're going to transition in the field trials. One thing led to another. I had a successful dog I was winning with, amateur. I was an amateur, but I was competing in open stakes and winning. And I was young, and a lot of some older guys in the game that maybe couldn't work their dog would ask me to help them. And basically one thing led to another. And I had several dogs that weren't my own that people wanted me to work, and I had to make the jump into the professional ranks.
So that first good young dog, that was Peaches.
Yep, that was her call name, Peaches.
Yep.
Yes,
Midnight Light.
Midnight Light. Yep.
Yep. Great. And what did you win with her?
She won her first championship. Was the Northern New England Woodcock Championship in Freiburg, Maine. I believe was 1990 or 91. And that same year, she won the Pennsylvania Grouse Championship. Was the first time I won that championship. I think I've won it maybe 4 times now. I'm pretty proud of that. They run on the Marionville grounds, which are kind of like the Mecca or Holy Grail to win in the cover dog circuit. So she won those 2 championships and several other trials, and she's the one she's a dog that kind of put me on the map.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. I first met you when you started coming to out west here to Wisconsin and Minnesota, and I think the first. And this is just my memory, it could be even failed, but the first big winner I remember you coming out here and mopping up with was Concord Mike. And there may have been someone before that did good out here, but Mike was, really a special dog.
Yeah, he really was. He was actually the first English pointer that I campaigned. And you're correct. That was the first time I won out in Wisconsin. Back then, they called it the Wisconsin Woodcock Championship. Now it's called the Cover Dog Championship. But that was 97, I believe. And came out there with my friend John Ferdinand.
Oh, yes. Yep.
We'd hunt out there and train, and I always liked going out there. It's just it sure is a long haul from Pennsylvania to Wisconsin, no doubt.
Yep. Yeah, it becomes a pretty good trip, and there was now I'd be remiss if I didn't mention I had our friend Bert Benchuf told me I needed to bring up Clover Rail, and the performance she had at the Wisconsin Championship in maybe 2000. You remember that?
I certainly remember that. That actually was his only title, but that dog was a special wild bird dog. he was just, you'd take him hunting, he was going to find you birds. He was that type of dog.
Yeah, I know. Bert's seen a lot of field trials, and that was one that stood out to him. So you can. And
he was braced with our friend Scotty Anderson's dog,
Rolling Stone dog. Yep, Lacey.
A Rolling Stone. Yeah, they were braced together, and they got winner and runner up.
Yep.
One of those exciting braces where one dog's pointing, one dog's back and forth, back and forth. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We were on that one course. I forget what you call it, but you go down the hill into what they'd call a bird field. It was just loaded with
birds. Yep. Yeah. I kind of thought it was like maybe the culvert course or somewhere, but there was a lot of.
You'd start right by where
right by the lunch area.
Yep.
Yeah. No, that's I thought I remembered that also. So you've had a lot of great performances over the years, and a number of them at that trial, and as well as Pennsylvania and other places. But is there any of those that from past dogs, right? Not ones that we're talking about today. I don't want to leave anybody out. We're not trying to hurt anybody's feelings, but we're just going off our memory and talking about dogs. But any of those other big performances you remember from not just in Wisconsin, but Michigan or Pennsylvania or up in New England that really stood out to you?
Absolutely. Like you said, there's just so many. But Wisconsin was, a lot of them are from Wisconsin, and simply because I've never been to a wild bird trial that had so many birds. The off the charts. I mean, grouse and woodcock. It didn't matter what course you had or whatever, you were going to get in the birds. And, I knew that the first time I came up there, and it was a great place to go and train too. There were a lot of accessible covers close to the trial. Like if you didn't have a dog to run, you could go work a dog. So Wisconsin was a great place, a venue to run in. A little dog Taz had some great performances there, and Pine Hill Trap Shooter. He was an interesting dog. I think he won maybe 4 or 5 championships, and they were all concentrated on 2 grounds, Wisconsin and Arcadia grounds in Rhode Island. And thinking back, I was just thinking this the other day, the grounds were similar in the sense that the courses, a lot of the courses paralleled a river.
Yep.
And Trap Shooter was a big running dog, but he could get left or right on you and out of the pocket real easy. And those 2 venues kept him funneled right on down the course. And it seemed like on those venues he was tough to beat because he was going to find birds. He was a hell of a bird finder. It had all of the other attributes, big running and everything. But the key was keeping him with you on the course, and those grounds, because of the lay of the land and the river, really worked well for him. So that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, no, I've seen a number of dogs, at Wisconsin that way, because it's the river on one side and a lot of times a hill on the other. But
right.
But there's a lot of places, like just about everywhere in the cover dog, trials and the grouse woods. There's a lot of places. If a dog wants to get away from you, they surely can. And once they get settled in, a lot of times, and I think that he probably was one like that. Once they get settled in, and start finding birds, and boy, they can really put it together right.
And the ironic thing is he. Like I said, did some winning, and both years that he was invited to the Invitational, I believe, well, I shouldn't say both years, but one year he was invited to the Invitational was in Pennsylvania on the Marionville grounds, and I never once in his career finished him in a stake at Marionville, because those grounds are there's nothing to hold the dog back, and he was just too much dog there. So a lot of this game, people don't realize a lot of luck involved because you're combining several animals. You're combining a dog, a bird, and then you take in the consideration the luck of the draw, the time of the day, weather conditions, and you put all of that together, and you got to get pretty lucky to have everything, you know, fall into place. You got to start with a great dog. You got to start with a well-trained dog, and then you got to get lucky.
Yep. Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's a lot, really, things have to come together, and you know, that's
I have a dog that brings up a current dog that I have, a dog by the name of Sterlingworth Jack. He's probably right around heading into his 6 years old, and he's probably one of the most talented dogs I've ever had. And he just hasn't had any field trial luck in the sense. I mean, he's done some winning, and when he wins, he's spectacular. But at the championship level, it just seems. I remember running him maybe 2 years ago in the Lake States Grouse Championship, and as you know, some championships designate which type of bird must be pointed to win, and the Lake States is one of those where you must point a grouse. And I ran him. Tom Frucci was the judge. We all know Tom from Michigan, great guy. And Jack ran a hell of a race and had a spectacular limb woodcock find. Everything was just beautiful. Finished the hour, and you know, obviously, you know, I knew I wasn't going to win because it wasn't a grouse. And at the time, Jack was a young dog. So Tom that year was also the secretary for the Grand National. So the Grand National was coming right up. So I emailed Tom my entries for the Grand National. And it was the funniest thing. I hit send, and almost instantly I get an email back. He said, Robert, you forgot one of your dogs. I said, what are you talking about, Tom? I emailed him back. He said, in the email, he said, Sterlingworth Jack, that dog you just ran in the Lake States. I said, well, he's not entered in the Lake States because at the time he was a young dog. He didn't have a shooting dog placement. He had qualified for the Lake States via Derby placement. And he was just surprised. He said, I can't believe. He said, that's one of the nicest dogs I've ever seen. So that's getting back to the luck. There's a dog that just has it all, but just hasn't had the luck part of it yet, and he will. He's you know, he's destined for a big win.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I've seen him. You know, I see a lot of pictures of him and videos when you're training. You know, and that's you know, as a lot of people know, I mean, you do as good a job, if not better, than anybody when it comes to sharing videos and photos of your training sessions. And that's been, I think that's great. I think it's great for the sport. I think it's obviously great for your owners. They get to see what's happening. I know a couple of years ago you worked a dog for me, and it was, you know, that's a fun thing to see. You know, you're interested in how those dogs are doing, and what, you know, and I guess I can speak for myself. It didn't, you know, I wasn't worried about how the dog was doing as far as, you know, how he was progressing, but it just because I trust what's going on. And I think most of your owners would feel the same way, but it's real fun to see it anyway, you know?
Yeah, it's become a huge part of my business, and I found that it's so much easier for me. You know, someone says, well, how's my dog doing? And I'm trying to explain something. Well, here it is. You can actually see it. And even before, you know, the videos and pictures were available years ago, I found that, you know, being brutally honest about a client's dog to them is really important. You know, a lot of guys and women that might have a dog with me, they want that dog to be something maybe it's not, because we all love our pets and dogs. But, you know, to win at this level, to compete, you got to be really, really, really honest about the dog's ability. And, you know, sometimes maybe I can show a client a video of their dog competing against a dog that is at that level, and they can see right away for themselves, my dog's lacking this or needs to work on something else. So yeah. And it's fun for me too, because I like the end of the day, reviewing everything we've done and seeing, boy, and a lot of times I'll pick, if someone's videotaping something for me, I'll pick something up on a dog that maybe, I'm not seeing. I'm out flushing the bird, and the dog's head flagging or anything, and
Right.
I could say, hey, we got to work on that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I could see there's a lot of value to that on both ends. So these days, obviously you're running, you're running the cover dog trials like we talked about, and then the walk and shooting dog trials that you run in, I think are mostly on the U.S. Complete side. You've been super successful there, top open handler the last 3 years, maybe. And I think Rich Waters mentioned that this year you look like you're probably going to win it again. But that's I suppose nothing official, but we don't know if we'll run any more trials this year. But what do you like about that U.S. Complete game?
Right. Yeah, I'll compete in any foot handling trial. I've competed a lot in national bird hunters. I was handler of the year there a few years back when I was going to more of them. That's more of a logistical thing. I really would love to go to their championship in Wisconsin. I went once and I loved those grounds out there, but whatever. So I'll run in any foot handling trial. What I like about them is the fact that you're going to see birds there, in the wild bird game, which it is really near and dear to me. I love wild birds. I love wild bird hunting, but it can get frustrating. We spoke about like the Marionville grounds. There's obviously some issues going on there where, you might go to a trial and run 40, 50, 60 dogs, and, 2 or 3 dogs will point a bird. So that's kind of disheartening. The nice thing about the walking, what we call walking trials or liberate a bird trials, is that they're putting birds out for the most part, and your dog's going to have an opportunity to point birds, and maybe not just one. I've seen a lot of dogs I've judged in wild bird trials where maybe, I'm going to bring up our buddy.
Well,
and
we lost you there for a second.
I judged the International Woodcock Championship, the one year that it rotated out to Wisconsin, and his dog, again, same dog, a Rolling Stone, did a hell of a job. She had one piece of bird work where, maybe some other judges might have looked at it in a different way and held it against her, where she moved a little bit. But to me, it was, it was a wild bird trial and was a spectacular find, and she won. I think she won it. She was winner and runner up. But regardless, in the liberated bird trials, you're going to see a lot more bird work, and sometimes the polish on the dog is much more important there. And I like that because my training in North Carolina, January and February, I spent a lot of time trying to put polish on my dogs on point, and it's something that pays off in the liberated bird trials.
Right. Yeah, that's one place you really notice that. And quite often, you're right. Quite often, those are multiple finds, right? I mean, it might be 5 or 6 or 7 pieces of bird work in an hour, and it becomes a separating point. That polish around game.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yep. You there? You got me still? Well, we lost Robert for a minute. Can you hear me there, Robert? You back?
I'm back. Yeah.
Perfect.
I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. That's one of those things.
Question.
Yeah. I was just saying, there's in the liberated bird game, and this would be the same on the horseback side, I would guess. Or I know probably for sure that, there's a lot more bird contacts, and the polish on a round game becomes more of a, determining factor. I mean, there's another separation, you may have races that are similar. You may have, a handful of dogs that have multiple fines, right? 5, 6, 7, who knows the number? Doesn't really matter. Right. I'm not much for counting them. So, but the polish around the birds really does stand out.
Well, the thing is, like at a liberated bird trial, even if it's not the number of birds, but say you have a dog out on an edge and it's pointing, and the judges ride over, you walk over across the field, you get there, the dog's standing, you walk out in front, you flush, you can't find this little liberated bird. The dog's on point a long time. Finally, you flush the bird, you have to walk back to the dog. So the dog is out there in plain sight of the judge, and he's really getting to see all that. Whereas, as you know, in a grouse trial, the bell stops over to the left in some thick cover, and everybody's excited, and the judge jumps off the horse, and you walk into the cover, and out goes the grouse, and you catch a glimpse of the dog standing there, the handler shoots the gun, and that's it. That's your fine. So,
right.
The judge looking at the dog on point is very brief, whereas in a liberated bird trial, it's an extended time. So that's, in my opinion, why the polish and the aesthetics of the dog on point become more of a factor.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. Yeah, makes perfect sense. So tell me a little bit about the string that you're running today.
Okay. This winter, it seems to run in cycles. Like one season you'll have a large group of puppies, and maybe another year derbies, another year shooting dogs. This winter we had a really, really nice crop of derbies that we worked. I have a couple of setters. Coal Creek Rip, owned by Jonathan Green, looks to be like a really up and coming superstar, in my opinion. It's going to take him a while. He's young. I have a couple of pointers from, you mentioned Rich Waters, basically from his bloodlines. One is Rampo Mountain Dock, owned by Bob Chabon in New Jersey. He looks like he's going to carry on, into the adult level. And another really nice derby we had is a pointer female sired by Bud of Pineywood, and that is Blue Ribbon Bella Harper. Blue Ribbon Harper Bella, owned by my friend Marty Festa. And an interesting thing about her, that dog is Marty's young son, James. I think he's 13, is getting very, very interested in the sport, very involved, and that's really, really important. If I could, ask one thing of all of us that are in the sport, is trying to get young people involved. And I think the best way to do that is, first and foremost, take them hunting. The sport of field trials is great, but the real the core of it is hunting. And get, just like a puppy, you have a puppy, you want to get them in the birds. Get the youngsters into birds, get them out hunting, get them shooting that gun, take them to a shooting preserve if you have to, where there's chuckers. Take them to your best cover where there's a lot of birds, and you get them interested, and then they get to see the dogs and everything, and that's how our sport's going to carry on into the future.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's one thing we keep saying, right? We need to have more young people around it, and that's probably the biggest key. It's not. I mean, I love it when the youth trials are awesome, and I think that those are important. But just having the kids around it, right? I mean, I bring and I know for a lot of us, that's a lot of work to bring kids when we go to field trials, but. I brought them all the time. I mean, it was, and part of the deal for me is if I didn't bring a couple of them with, I probably wasn't going either. So, but it turned out that, that was a big thing. And it's just a great way to spend time with your kids. And also, we have everything they want, right? We have dogs, and we have outside, and we have guns, and we there's all, we got mud, and we got everything they want. I mean, it's,
and you usually have a lot of great people around. Some of my my fondest memories of my career come from when my son was very little. He is not into the sport, which is fine. But when he was young, my wife Kimberly, we used to go every year. Mother's Day weekend, we'd go to the Flanagan farm. Pete Flanagan and Katie Flanagan up at Grouse Ridge Kennel. They'd run the big Lost Pond field trial, and it was just awesome. I miss those times. Michael was little. We'd go up there, spend 2-3 days up there, and the people were great, and the social events and just getting together with everybody was a lot of fun. Met a lot of great people up there, and unfortunately they don't run that anymore, but there are other trials like that if you did have small children and you wanted to go to a field trial, you can get that feeling at other trials for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yep. No, I think that's that's the key. and I'm just going to throw this out. I was really, really pleased last year when I went to a trial at the Minnesota Club, at Mora, and the number of kids there, probably 12 and under, was substantial. It was really nice to see. Pretty good group of young people in that club, and some good young guys, doing the work. And so it's showing, and I think that lends well for not only for the sport, but that club and those grounds. And so it's important just to get them out there and get them around it. And not everybody's gonna love it, but everybody should have the opportunity. And the ones that love it, like you and I did when we got started, are gonna probably stay around for a long time. And part of that is the people, right? I mean, all of our, I would guess, all of our friends are, come from this sport. Just to, it's the people that we end up spending time with, and some of the best people I've ever known are from this, from this sport. So,
right. I have some poker buddies that aren't in the bird dogs, but
they're not. Well, there's going to be some that are actually wayward.
Speaking of that, I have a friend from North Carolina, Peyton Spicer, that I play cards with, and this year I needed some help down in North Carolina, and he started coming around the kennel. And lo and behold, I really think he's bitten by the bug. He's really interested in the dogs. He's actually helping George, our friend George Nager. He's helping him out with a couple of dogs that are still down in North Carolina, taking them out, running them for him, and he's just absolutely loving it. I let him shoot a couple of birds this winter, and so maybe we have a new field trialer there, and his daughter. I guess she's probably somewhere around, 15 years old, totally in love with the dogs and the sport too. So, any chance you could get someone new into the game is important, I think.
Yeah. No, I agree completely. So speaking of Doc Nager, one of your great clients and owners, friends, who else, and I know there's been a lot of them through the years, and who else are you running dogs for today?
Oh boy. Paul Ober owns the, you have a red setter. Yeah. He has Celtic Kennels down in Reading, Pennsylvania. He breeds, world-class Irish setters for the field. They're dual registered, American Field and AKC. So we're working dogs for him. We mentioned Rich Waters already. Sterling Worth Jack's owner, Jim Millett, and his son, Dr. Peter Millett, out in Colorado. He has a really, really nice derby with me, which, now that you mention that I've been winning with Dunroven's Midnight Ike. And he's a special little dog because he's one of those dogs that, and I got him when he was about a year old. So it was probably a lot due to his early upbringing. Just a spectacular wild bird dog. I could put that dog down, in a parking lot outside of a Walmart, and he's going to somewhere find a woodcock or a grouse. And I think that's going to pay big dividends with that dog in the future trials I run him in, because as we talked about, in the wild bird game, finding a bird can be tough sometimes, and that's paramount. So he's a really neat dog. Yeah.
Yeah. Great. And let's see. There was another. Oh, the other dog that I wanted to mention was the Islander dog.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that dog.
Special dog. I believe he has 16 titles, which is pretty amazing. He, getting back to Wisconsin, my last trip out to Wisconsin, I hadn't gone there for a few years. I took a trip out there, and mostly because when I travel in the fall with a truckload of dogs, it's hard to go by yourself, which I mostly do. So I kind of limit my traveling to Michigan, which is about a 10-hour trip for me. Anything more than that with a truckload of dogs is too much. Anyway, that particular year, I hired someone to help me with the dogs and drive. And so I figured, well, let's go on the road. We went out to Wisconsin that year, and Islander, we call him Jesse, won the championship out there. So he's won, in all venues. I mean, he's won liberated bird trials where, it's big open edge country, like the Oak Ridge grounds in Pennsylvania. He's done very well there. It's just big, wide open spaces. He's also won in the Piney Woods, down at Hoffman, those grounds. He's won in cover dog trials. So he's a special dog. And I was just talking to his owner the other day, Peter Kazak, and I don't know what we were talking about. We were talking about his attributes, and I said the bottom line is, there's dogs that might be, as classy as him or as good a bird finders, whatever. But the one thing that Jesse Islander is superior to most any dogs I've ever had is his intelligence. I mean, the dog really can sort through what you're trying to teach him and figures it out. And now that he's been around the block so many years, he goes to field trial, and like a lot of times you'll have a dog and you'll be worried, like, boy, I hope he doesn't get too wired up because he knows he's at a trial or whatever. And he's the type of dog that he just, okay, we're at a field trial. I got to run down here. I got to do this. I got to do that. And he just does it. He's very, very intelligent dog. And hasn't been bred quite a lot, but there's enough puppies and derbies out there now that we're seeing a lot of potential in them. A couple of derbies are out there actually winning right now, so that's a good thing. And speaking of that, one of his first litters, we have a really, really nice young dog. Again, a dog that I think is going to have a great career, and that's a dog named Upper Medusa Violet. She's owned by Ed Marquis, and she is sired by Islander, and her mother was another champion that we ran. The dog's name was Frickin' Coco, owned by John Fricke from Michigan. And the nice thing about Violet is she really encompasses both her sire and her dam. Her dam, Coco, was, again, a special bird finder. I mean, she just went out and found birds. I could tell you stories about her, amazing wild bird dog. And it seems like Violet is that type of dog. She's probably, if I had to pick a dog right now in the kennel to go out and find a wild bird with, she would be, number one or two for sure. And she also has that intelligence that we see from Islander. So, and breeding is very important in this game. I don't claim to be a breeder. I've learned a lot and seen a lot over the years. But a well-bred dog makes makes all the difference, you know.
Who bred the Islander dog?
He came from a friend of mine from New York, John Molly. He had a gridiron female,
Okay.
and bred to the Insider,
Okay.
and that's where Islander came from. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the Insider was another one that was kind of that way. I mean, he was a super smart dog, and I think that, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of good blood there. What, speaking of Doc Nager, tell me a little bit about that female of his that you've won with quite a bit.
I lost you for just a minute there. Tell me that one more time.
That you've won with quite a bit. The
Violet
of
I'm
Doc
sorry.
of George Nager.
Oh, okay. And that would be that would be Miss Penstar.
Miss Penstar, yep.
Yeah, she's a really special dog. I took over working her halfway through her Derby season. I saw her as a Derby early winter of her Derby season, and I just I fell in love with her. I was like, that's a really special little dog. And anyway, her original owner gave her to me to campaign that spring, and just, she won everything. She was a really, really good Derby. And she came up for sale, and George purchased her, and kind of the rest is history. She's won a lot for us. It's just like some of the other dogs we were talking about. She was a dual dog. She's won in Michigan on grouse and woodcock, and she's won in Michigan at the Highland Ground. She's won down south. She's won up in New England. And to me, that's a stamp of a great dog, a dog that could go anywhere and do anything. Like we talked about the Pine Hill trap shooter dog that was kind of, this is where he could do good. Not with Miss Penstar, we call her Lady. She could go anywhere and win anywhere. And the trial's not over until she runs. I mean, she's just a little thing. And, a lot of times I'll walk to the line and, maybe get a glance from a judge that thinks, what's this little dog going to do? But she certainly doesn't run little. She runs like a big dog. She's put down some of the best ground races I've ever had.
We've seen some little ones do pretty good in that string, right? There's one that comes to mind, Craig Peters' dog.
Oh, absolutely. Definitely one of the greatest dogs I've ever had the pleasure of training and running. Keystone's Red Rider. She was a younger sister to Taz, who also was little. And personally, I'm a little guy, and these dogs, when we travel, if people don't know this, we have a topper, a box on the top of the truck, and I don't really care to pick up the big 60-pound pointers and put them in the box. It's a lot of work. Yep. So the little dogs, that's convenient. But Lacey was her call name. She was quite the dog.
Yeah, I would say.
And again, she excuse me, she won national championships on grouse and the Liberated game. She won the U.S. Complete National Open Championship, and in the same year won the National Amateur Grouse Championship. So that's just, to me, that's amazing. That's
she was another one that I always felt, was when you mentioned, that field trial is not over until she runs. She was
for sure.
She was really going to give it her all, and was a really good bird dog. And I mean, she had everything you were looking for when in every place you went.
That's a great point you bring up. Something I like to see in a dog is a dog that no matter what the conditions are, no matter, if they're, I've had dogs that you pull out of the truck and they're not feeling well. They're just like people, whatever, a little under the weather, whatever. And yet you take them to the line and you're going to compete with them. They want to do it. Now, not all dogs are like that. There are some dogs that, it's raining out. Well, they're not happy with that. And you could see that in their performance. But I really think that the truly great dogs, they're going to give it their all every time.
Yep. No, I agree with you completely. And she was one that was that way. So it was, sure. and Taz was too. I surely wouldn't. I mean, you mentioned a few times that he was on my list of ones I wanted to bring up, but he he beat me lots of times. He was an awful good dog. So,
Yeah.
Speaking of, so let's talk about, we've talked about a lot of your, go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to mention one thing about Taz, because a lot of newer guys getting into the game, and I have a couple of new clients that maybe have a puppy or a derby, and I bring Taz up quite often, because he won 8 open championships, the most open championships of any dog that I've ever run. He placed in 8 open championships. That being said, at the end of his first year shooting dog, well, halfway through his first year shooting dog, he had a combined total of 1 placement. It was a 3rd place open derby placement. It was actually, again, getting back to Wisconsin.
It was
seems
in
like
Wisconsin,
I spent
yep.
a lot of time out there. Yeah.
Yep.
And he was a dog that I could tell was great, but he needed to work. And I remember he was owned by Phil Gould, and Phil took him that first year shooting dog out to the prairies and spent some time with him, brought him back, and he was at his wit's end. He said, "I'm going to get rid of this dog. He can't take the heat." That was his thing. He didn't think he could take the heat. He didn't think he was going to win and everything. And I was totally in love with the dog and thought the world of him and knew that he could win. And I remember saying to Phil, I just got really frustrated. I was like, "Phil, listen, I don't have the money, but I'm going to borrow it somewhere. If you want to sell this dog, I'm buying him right here and now." I was like, this dog's going to win. And, Phil kind of chuckled and he said, no. He said, we'll give him some more time. So, his first year shooting dog, he did nothing. And he had that 1 derby placement. So that next summer, a field trial, I'm sure you'll recognize his name, Bob Watts. He's done a lot of successful breeding in the grouse woods with his line of 10-star dogs with Dick Brenneman. He came out to train dogs with me one day, and he said to me, this was like in late August, he said to me, "Boy, I was wondering whatever happened to that dog, Taz. I saw him as a derby, and I really liked him." I said, he's coming. I said, and literally the next weekend was the they used to run they call it the Southern New England Woodcock Championship. Now it runs in Rhode Island in the spring, but back then it used to run Labor Day weekend at Arcadia. And that was another great trial. They had a nice social event and that sort of thing. But anyway, 1 week later, I take him to that trial, and it is blazing hot when he runs. He runs right in the middle of the day, pushing 90 degrees. It was in the upper 80s, and he scorched the course. Had 1 or 2 beautiful woodcock finds, I can't remember, and he won the championship. So he went from 1 3rd place derby placement through his first year shooting dog complete, and boom, he was a champion just like that. And that was pretty gratifying. And then from there, everything fell into place, and he did a lot of winning.
Yeah, great. That's a great
and
story.
The fact that Phil, his issue with the dog was his heat tolerance, and he blew everybody away on really, really tough conditions. The hottest conditions you're probably going to run a dog on grouse and woodcock. So that was great.
Yeah, I don't remember every time that he ran in Wisconsin, but there's quite often the time there, it was pretty warm.
Yeah,
and that it's as odd as it seemed. We'd go to there and it would be 80 plus degrees, and the next week you go to Minnesota and it'd be snowing.
Yeah,
it was. It did seem like there was a lot of those trials like that. So, one thing I kind of wanted you. So you've been to a lot of trials, and we've talked about a lot of your dogs, and kind of. I'm sure there's great performances out there that other people ran, right? Other people's dogs. Give me a couple of those that stand out in your memory.
I think it was the first title for this dog, a pointer that, and you'll know the dog right away. Joe McCarl ran Hard Driving Bev, and I was braced with her at Marionville, and halfway through the brace, I called my dog in and put the leash on her, because this dog was just, I mean, it was one of those performances that you were just blown away, and so that one sticks out in my head. She had several grouse finds on the end course on the Lolita side. Great race, and just a spectacular performance. So that was pretty special.
Yeah. Oh, and she had quite a few of those at Marionville.
One dog that you ran, Berg Brothers Jack. Again, it seems like all we're talking about is Wisconsin, but back at those grounds, you ran him, and don't think you placed him that time, but boy, it was quite a fun performance. It might have been on, no, it wasn't on the same course. It was on that other one where you went down the hill.
Yeah, they called it the Stokely's Diablo Jake course, but yeah.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, that was as good a job as I've ever done in the woods, to be honest with you. Win or lose, and we didn't win. Taz won, but I think, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure.
I don't remember, but that was something.
Yeah, I know he did a heck of a job. Yeah, he had 7 fines, I think, and it's just a good day, right? That's a lot of fun. I remember every bit of it. He did a hell of a job.
Yeah, and back then those trials were interesting because a lot of the newer guys in the sport back then, that trial allowed beeper collars, and that was always a big part of my trial trip for the year. So I did a lot of training with beepers back then, and a totally different training and dog to compete or hunt with a beeper collar. Now I don't use beeper collars at all. In fact, I had a dog, a really nice young dog that I just sold to a client of mine, and he was doing great. But the beeper, he wanted his dog worked with a beeper collar, and that beeper just complicated everything. And I was trying to work him through it. I didn't have the dog long enough. I'm sure he's going to be fine, and he'll get it. But I remembered back that, back then that was a whole different way of training with the beeper collar. Now you get set in your ways with the GPS and to locate the dog, and it's totally different.
Yep. Yeah. I know I did run a beeper at the first couple of years at Wisconsin when they did allow them. I did not, by the time that trial with Jack ran, I didn't run a beeper, but yeah, that was, it was interesting, right? I mean, and I'm not ever going to say I was against it when they did it. Cause it was a place where, you could get pointed, 10 yards off the walking path and walk right by them.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And as many birds as there were there, it was very common that was going to happen. It was, because you were, I know, I remember Rod Lyon talking one time, we talked about having unproductives. He said, well, at these grounds, if you get pointed, you walk big enough, you'll flush a woodcock somewhere.
Exactly.
There's just a lot of birds there. So
then he might be pointing a grouse that ran off, and you're definitely going to find a woodcock somewhere.
Yep. Well, I had going back to red dogs, and it was at those grounds one time. I had that Maggie dog, that Salsa. She would not point woodcock, and she didn't knock them. She never pointed it. We never, and I one time there, I was flushing in front of her. No one was going to be a grouse, and a woodcock came up, and I was like, wow, this is a fluke. She's never pointed a woodcock in her life. And there was one there, but, that's,
you're right. She was probably pointing a grouse.
Probably pointed a grouse that walked off or maybe had to stop to flush on one. Who knows? But, but I knew for sure. I took credit, but it wasn't, I know till this day, from this day, she was not pointing a woodcock. Yeah. But yeah, well, it's great. Now go back. We won't hold you too much longer. We could go on forever because this is fun stuff to talk about and great stories. One thing I think is important when these young guys get started, or new people, whatever age they are, I think the only way that I've ever seen anybody stick around, I've said this on every broadcast, is when they end up with a mentor, right? They end up with people that they feel comfortable with going to, with questions about a dog, or what they should do when they're going to this trial. I know you had some, right? You had Peter, of course, you had your uncle. Were there some other, people when you were first getting started that maybe pros when you were first getting started as a pro, guys
Absolutely.
that you worked with some?
Absolutely. Two that come to mind right away are Tom Ging Er. He's passed away. He was a gun dog trainer from Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania, and I spent a lot of time with him, learning about dogs and learning about the field trials. He was secretary of the Pennsylvania Grouse Championship when I first met him, again, I was a young kid, probably just out of high school. I didn't know anything about field trials, so to speak. And I saw an ad for the Pennsylvania Grouse Championship, and they had a Derby stake grouse, right? And I had a Gordon setter at the time, and I called up and, to enter the dog. And I said, I'm just curious. I said, well, I'm coming to this Derby stake. I said, how many grouse am I going to see? Like, I was thinking I was going to some great refuge, Marionville, Pennsylvania, where they run the grouse championship. And Slicker, right off the top, he said, you won't see any birds on the Derby course. There won't be any birds. I'm like, what? It's a grouse trial and there's going to be no birds? And he said, yeah, he said, they'll just run them all and call them back. But anyway, so Tom was a big influence. And another professional trainer that I learned a lot from, Pete DeAngelis. He's still actively working. I think he works mostly Brittany's down in Slatington, Pennsylvania. But again, I used to spend a lot of time with him. When I was getting started, he was transitioning from amateur into a professional horseback trainer. So I spent a lot of time watching him work dogs on liberated birds. A lot of my techniques and things I've learned have come, from what I learned from him. So those two probably were the biggest influences. And then I was very fortunate when I did even when I was an amateur, when I first turned pro, the trainers and handlers that I ran against, in my opinion, were all, great guys and helpful. Sure, there was competition in that, but I never felt like I was at odds with any of them. First comes to mind Dave Hughes, a legendary Hall of Fame trainer. Learned a lot by being braced with him and talking to him. And Jim Tandy out in your neck of the woods, great guy. Got to spend a lot of time with him. Scott Chafee from Michigan. So a great camaraderie with my peers over the years, and I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah, Ralph Fitzmaurice was around.
Oh yeah,
quite a bit.
Yeah, I spent a whole season with Ralph. Went on the circuit up to New England with him, and then spent a winter with him, Barnwell, South Carolina, training. I learned a lot from Ralph too. Yeah, absolutely. Forgot about him, but he definitely was a big influence on me.
Yeah, great. So we'll start wrapping up. So your plan for the rest of this season is to work dogs at home and just kind of see how this all unfolds, and then you work at home all summer, right? You don't travel.
Yeah.
You don't. You stay home. You got plenty of places to go and things to do. Right. So you work there and get ready all summer, and then next fall you get started again on both some liberated bird trials as well as wild bird trials.
Yeah. Like I said, I have a lot of wild birds, so I don't need to, some guys will go out to Wisconsin or go to the prairies or whatever for summer training. I'm fortunate that I have a lot of wild birds here in Pennsylvania and a couple of places that we have access to train on. So I will be home all summer, working dogs, preparing. We do a lot of gun dog training, which I really enjoy. I love I love shooting birds, so that's a benefit of the gun dogs we work. We shoot a lot of birds over them, and we'll do that all summer. And then come the fall, hopefully things will be back to normal, and the trials will be set, and we'll get on the road and go after it again. Sure.
Yeah, great. Any other last words that you'd like to share? If someone wants to get a hold of you, they got a question about a dog, they got work they want to get done, they want to buy a dog bell from you. How do they get a hold of you?
It's real easy. It's just Midnight Kennel, and you can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Facebook, on the internet. We have a website. So Midnight Kennel, Google it, whatever, Facebook. We're going to pop up all over the place. Numbers there, email, text message, whatever. We're constantly connected and checking things. Yeah.
Super. Yeah. And I guess I'm not sure I mentioned this before. Obviously this is going live on Facebook tonight. It'll be here for all time for people to come back and watch. So, and it's also, on Field Trial Central's, YouTube page, going live on YouTube. Once again, feel free to share it there. Like it, click the little bell on the bottom so you get notified whenever we're going to do these again. We're going to do a lot more of these shows. We're going to do them with field trial trainers and handlers, as well as some owners, and personalities in the sport. There's a lot of characters and great people in this sport, and we're gonna try to get as many of them on here as we can, and just try to help get the word out, how great this sport is and the kind of people that we have in it, right? The people like Robert and a lot of these other ones that we've talked about. So I see we've had quite a few people online making comments. I'm going to just throw a few of them across there. One, Jenny Herzog just wants to know how Sir Richard is doing.
Sir Richard's doing fine. He's a dog that's not old enough to be a derby and too old to be a puppy now. So he's a tweener. So we're kind of going slow with him, but he'll be just fine. Yeah.
We had let's see, I'm going to find another one here. Here it is. We talked a little bit about Grace, Peyton's daughter, loved up my red setter Cinder when she was down there. So you got, here's probably one of the better ones. Mom's on. So we know that's true. So,
oh yeah.
We had a lot of comments, not a lot of questions, a lot of comments. And it's great to see, great to see the people here, and great to see, everybody, joining in, and we're looking forward to this being shared and the views, shooting through the roof as time goes on. If anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to me. If there's, something, anything else someone needs or they want to see when we're doing this.
I'll tell you what I'd like to see. The sport is, you're out in the field or the woods, off the beaten path. It's not real accessible. And if maybe some, Field Trial Central or other organizations could get out and maybe somehow video or whatever, put trials, the actual trial, a brace or whatever, videos, that sort of thing, and let people see what actually goes on in a trial. I'll have clients come out and train with me and watch me work a dog and everything, and they'll be asking me all sorts of questions about what if this happens in a trial? What about this? If they could see that, on the internet or on Facebook or whatever, I think that would be a big boost to the sport.
Yep, I agree. Those are all things that have been bouncing around in my head for a lot of years. So,
well, if you need any help with any of that, any trials that I'm going to, feel free to reach out to me. I'll definitely help you out.
I appreciate it. Yep, I appreciate it. All right, Robert. Well, thanks a lot. We will we'll let you go tonight. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule there.
I enjoyed it.
To talk with us. I know everybody's going to love this show. It really went well. And I will see you down the road. Any questions, give me a holler.
All right, buddy. Take care.
Thanks. You bet.
Peace.